hit that like button and subscribe.
I want you to take a second, wherever you are right now, and just look at the calendar. Today is Sunday, March 1st, 2026. I really want you to anchor yourself in that date because you, along with the rest of the planet, have just woken up to a world that has been fundamentally, irrevocably altered overnight.
Altered is definitely one word for,
Yeah.
shattered might be a bit more accurate for the geopolitical map we're looking at this morning.
Right, exactly. We're going to take you through a massive stack of breaking sources for this deep dive. We've got declassified military briefings, live international news updates, historical records, and all these intense geopolitical analyses pouring in. Our mission is to synthesize all of this so you can understand exactly what just happened, how it was executed, and what it means for you and the world moving forward. We are talking about a massive, flawlessly coordinated U.S. and Israeli military offensive against Iran that kicked off yesterday, Operation Epic Fury for the U.S., and Operation Roar the Lion for Israel.
Wait, seriously, flawlessly coordinated. Look, the execution was unprecedented, sure, but calling anything in modern warfare flawless is buying the Pentagon's PR a bit too early. The geopolitical shockwaves are deeply complex, and the potential for a drawn-out global conflict is sitting right on our doorstep.
Well, you have to admit the headline is absolutely staggering. The strikes resulted in the total decapitation of the Iranian government. They took out the supreme leader, 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, alongside 40 top Iranian commanders, all in one fell swoop. The absolute top echelon of the regime has essentially vanished. I'm just in awe of the sheer scale of this. This is a historical hinge point. Imagine going to sleep in one reality and waking up in a world where an entire regime's leadership structure has been dismantled by this perfect storm of precision munitions.
Oh, come on. A perfect storm. Let's break down the actual mechanics of how you achieve a decapitation strike of this magnitude against a country as fortified as Iran. Because it requires a level of synchronization that is frankly terrifying, and relying on it is a massive gamble.
But the strategy is brilliant. I was reading through the declassified briefs, and the core concept is this thing called time on target. The basic premise is hitting everything at once, and the math they use to choreograph this across thousands of miles of airspace is just mind-blowing.
It's a logistical nightmare is what it is.
Yeah.
Time on target started as an artillery concept in World War II. You coordinate cannons so the shells land on the enemy at the exact same millisecond. But scaling that to a global level, we're talking about launching a swarm of weapons from entirely different environments and hoping human error doesn't ruin the whole thing.
Right, but picture where these weapons are coming from. You've got cruise missiles firing from submerged submarines in the ocean. You have Tomahawks launching from Arleigh Burke-class destroyers like the USS Thomas Hudner. And simultaneously, massive payload drops from B-2 Spirit stealth bombers taking off from Missouri or Diego Garcia, plus Israeli fighter jets crossing the Middle East. Every single platform leaves at a different time, traveling at completely different speeds.
And you think that just happens automatically. The math has to be dialed in so perfectly that a missile fired from a sub 2 hours ago and a bomb from a stealth bomber 2 minutes ago impacts cities like Karaj, Qom, Kermanshah, and Isfahan at the exact same second.
Exactly simultaneously. That's what makes it so incredible. It denies the enemy's nervous system any chance to react. If you hit Karaj and then 10 minutes later a bomb hits Qom, the air defenses go on maximum alert. They rush their top leadership into deep underground bunkers. By hitting the industrial hubs, the ideological centers, the missile sites, and the nuclear facilities all at once, you induce pure systemic shock.
Right, you overwhelm the military apparatus before it registers the pain. The goal is instant regime collapse.
But here's the thing you're glossing over. Iran is not some defenseless sandbox. They have serious air defense systems. They've got their homegrown Bavar systems and highly advanced Russian-supplied S-300 and S-400 batteries. Those are some of the most lethal anti-aircraft weapons on Earth. Which is exactly why the electronic warfare component is the most fascinating part of this whole deep dive. They didn't just physically attack the radars, they completely blinded them. They used space, sea, and air assets to inject false data directly into the Iranian radar screens.
It is a masterclass in cyber operations, I'll give you that. The S-300 and S-400 use phased array radar. The U.S. injected false data right into those receivers. So the operators were staring at pure static or a totally fabricated picture of the airspace.
And the trap, the brilliant tactical trap with the ADM-160 MLDs, the miniature air-launched decoys. It's essentially a tiny drone that broadcasts the exact radar cross-section of a massive fighter jet, like an F-15.
Yeah, just flying electronic ghosts.
Put yourself in the shoes of that Iranian radar operator. Your screens are flickering, and suddenly you see what looks like a massive squadron of American F-15s screaming toward Tehran at Mach 1. You would absolutely panic.
Of course you'd panic. You lock onto those targets, you power up your heavy targeting radars to get a missile lock. But the moment those operators powered up to engage the ghost planes, they committed a fatal error.
They gave away their exact physical locations. They lit up like a Christmas tree on the electronic map. And while they were tracking the decoys, the real fifth-generation stealth fighters, the F-35s and F-22 Raptors, just sliced through the airspace completely undetected. It's pure genius.
It's highly effective misdirection. But it kicked off a brutal sequence of events. Over 900 daytime strikes with over 1,000 targets hit in the first 24 hours. The first wave was just blinding the eyes, Tomahawk missiles flying nap of the earth, basically hugging the terrain to destroy the radar headquarters in Tehran, Elam, and Khuzestan.
And flying that low through the Iranian mountains requires insane navigation tech to avoid slamming into peaks. They carved out these safe, invisible corridors for the human pilots coming right behind them in Wave 2. That's when the B-2 stealth bombers dropped those massive 2,000-pound bunker busters on the deep nuclear and drone facilities in Isfahan.
Wait, seriously? You're cheering for bunker busters dropping on Isfahan? Do you understand what that actually means for a populated city? These aren't precise little surgical tools. A bunker buster buries itself into solid mountain rock and hollows out the facility from the inside.
I know, it's a massive kinetic event. The seismic shock alone operates almost like a man-made earthquake. The briefs mention it can collapse civilian tunnels and rupture water mains.
Exactly. It's highly destructive and cannot be perfectly contained. And while the bombers were doing that, you had the F-15E Strike Eagles acting as bomb trucks. They were carrying up to 19 JDAMs.
The Joint Direct Attack Munition, taking a cheap, unguided gravity bomb and strapping GPS fins to it to turn it into a hyper-accurate sniper weapon. They hunted down the mobile ballistic missile launchers hiding in the valleys. And then Wave 3 hit the military manufacturing and air bases, like destroying the Iranian F-5s and F-4s on the tarmac at Tabriz airport before they could even take off.
It's an overwhelming show of force. The USS Gerald R. Ford supercarrier was launching a fully loaded combat aircraft every 30 seconds using its electromagnetic catapults. But the logistics for the Israeli pilots, flying 930 to 1,240 miles across hostile airspace.
It required mid-air refueling, flying gas stations meeting up with them in contested skies.
Which is my point about this not being flawless. If one tanker is out of position due to weather, or one jet burns fuel too fast trying to evade a radar spike, the entire time on target synchronization collapses. The margin for error was essentially zero.
But they pulled it off. And that leads us to the primary goal, the decapitation strike. They targeted the highly sensitive compounds in the Jamhuri district and Pasteur Street in Tehran, and they got him. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is confirmed dead, along with Abdulrahim Musavi, the chief of staff of the armed forces.
Oh, come on. You're saying they got him. Like, that simply solves the problem. Let's analyze the psychological and structural impact of erasing a ruler who held absolute power since 1989. This isn't just swapping out a president. He was the religious and constitutional anchor of the entire nation.
Right. It creates an immediate, catastrophic power vacuum. The top layer of command is gone.
Which actually makes things infinitely more dangerous in the short term. And the human toll here is devastating. We are looking at massive collateral damage. Iranian state media and the Red Crescent are reporting 201 people killed and over 700 injured.
I saw those reports. There was a deeply tragic incident where a girls' school in the south was hit and over 80 people were killed. The U.S. military is looking into the civilian casualty reports, but the loss of innocent life is just a horrific reality of high-intensity urban warfare.
And did taking out the leadership stop the Iranian military from fighting back? No. It triggered an immediate, furious response. Operation Truthful Promise 4. Even with their central command gone, surviving units fired a massive wave of suicide drones and ballistic missiles at U.S. and allied bases.
The geographic spread of the retaliation is massive. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was hit by a drone, causing a major fire. That's the nerve center for all naval operations in the region. The UAE's Al Dhafra Air Base was hit. Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait was struck, injuring 3 troops.
And U.S. Central Command confirmed 3 American service members were killed in action and 5 seriously wounded. Not to mention the impact on Israel, rocket sirens sending millions into bomb shelters.
U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee was forced into a secure shelter. American athletes like Destiny Littleton shared footage of drones flying right over Jerusalem. And 8 Israelis were killed in a residential area in Beit Shemesh.
But the detail that really highlights how close we are to the edge of the cliff is the Temple Mount. An Iranian warhead reportedly landed just a few hundred meters from the Temple Mount in the old city of Jerusalem.
That is deeply unsettling. If Al-Aqsa Mosque had been hit, even by a misfired missile, the outrage across the global Muslim community would have ignited a regional holy war. It really shows how reckless the retaliation is.
Reckless. Try completely unguided. Because of your brilliant decapitation strike, we have a terrifying situation. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that many Iranian military units are now completely isolated. Their communications are destroyed.
He said they are acting on general instructions given to them in advance, like a dead-hand protocol.
Exactly. You have a decentralized, heavily armed military with thousands of ballistic missiles operating in a total vacuum. There is no central authority to tell them to stop or to avoid holy sites. They are just executing pre-programmed revenge. This is why you don't just blindly celebrate decapitating a massive military apparatus.
That is a staggering reality. But the shockwaves are also hitting the global markets instantly. Commercial airspace shut down across the entire Middle East. Israel, Qatar, Syria, Iran, Iraq, the UAE. Tens of thousands of travelers are stranded.
And when the commodity markets opened in Asia, global oil prices jumped nearly 10%. Brent crude shot up. And it all traces back to a waterway that's only 21 miles wide. The Strait of Hormuz.
Right, because a third of the world's seaborne oil exports pass through those narrow, deep-water shipping lanes. They're only about 2 miles wide in each direction.
It is the ultimate bottleneck. There is a palpable fear that Iran's isolated units or proxies like the Houthis might mine the strait or use anti-ship missiles. If you sink one supertanker in those lanes, you effectively block the artery and cripple the global supply chain.
And the violence is spilling over into civil unrest, too. In Karachi, Pakistan, hundreds of protesters stormed the U.S. consulate. 6 people were killed, and it's already reached American soil. The mass shooting in Austin, Texas.
3 dead, 14 wounded at a downtown beer garden.
And the FBI is investigating it as a potential act of terrorism because the suspect, India Gadianya, wore a Property of Allah hoodie and an Iranian flag emblem. This is exactly what counterterrorism officials have been warning about. Former FBI official Chris Swecker said that a massive strike against Iran could activate Hezbollah and Hamas sleeper cells residing within the United States.
Right. Swecker pointed out these organizations have maintained a shadowy presence here since the 80s for fundraising and surveillance. But with the regime decapitated, lone sympathizers view it as a call to martyrdom. The FBI is on maximum alert. We kicked the hornet's nest, and now we are dealing with the swarm at home.
Which brings up the arsenal dilemma, because while the U.S. flexed unbelievable firepower to execute the strike, defense insiders are sounding a massive alarm about what happens next. The U.S. military relies on advanced air defense interceptors like Fan-A, Patriot Pac-3, and SM-3 to protect against these incoming missiles.
And here is where your flawless mathematical symphony crashes into basic economics. Do you know how these interceptors work? They use hit-to-kill technology. They literally fire a kinetic kill vehicle to hit a bullet with a bullet in the upper atmosphere.
It's an astonishing feat of engineering.
Yeah, an engineering feat that costs a fortune. It's an unsustainable math problem. We are firing a $4 million Ferrari into the sky to destroy a $20,000 Honda Civic. And these interceptors exist in a strictly finite, zero-sum global inventory.
The briefings point out that we've already severely drawn down our stockpiles defending Ukraine and shielding Israel in previous escalations. And you can't just ramp up a factory overnight. It takes over a year to replenish these systems because the supply chains for the specialized microchips are so fragile.
The U.S. produces maybe 600 to 650 Patriot Pac-3s a year. Meanwhile, Iran has an estimated arsenal of 1,500 to 2,000 ballistic missiles, plus thousands of cheap suicide drones. Military doctrine says you have to fire 2 or 3 interceptors at a single incoming missile to guarantee destruction.
So if Iran launches just a few hundred missiles, we could consume an entire year's worth of U.S. interceptor production in a matter of days.
Wait, seriously? Do you see the problem now? If they launch 2,000 of those cheap Civics, we literally go bankrupt on defense. We run out of shields to protect our troops. And the Pentagon can't just burn through every Patriot we own on Iran, because what happens if China makes a move on Taiwan? Or North Korea escalates?
We have to hold a massive strategic reserve for near-peer adversaries.
Exactly. As retired General Charles Wald warned, bombing Iran doesn't magically create political stability. You can destroy the hardware, but winning the battle is very different from winning the war. Air power degrades capability. It doesn't solve the geopolitical crisis.
But when you look at the risk of running out of interceptors and the threat to the global economy, it begs the question, why now? Why did the U.S. and Israel decide a decapitation strike was absolutely necessary today? To grasp that, we really have to look at the weight of history. This current war is the boiling over of a 47-year kettle.
Oh, absolutely. The Islamic Revolution in 1979 transformed Iran into an adversary. The foundational rupture was the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis.
52 Americans held captive for 444 days. And from there, Iran realized they couldn't fight a conventional war against the Pentagon, so they built the axis of resistance. They funded proxy militias like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis to bleed U.S. interests with plausible deniability.
The milestones of this shadow war are incredibly bloody. The 1983 Beirut Marine Barracks bombing killed 241 Americans. The torture and death of CIA Station Chief William Buckley by Hezbollah.
And the 1988 Operation Praying Mantis naval battle. The 1996 Khobar Towers bombing. But the most devastating toll was during the Iraq War. Iran flooded the insurgency with explosively formed penetrators, or EFPs.
A devastatingly simple piece of physics. A shaped explosive charge turns a copper disc into a molten slug traveling at Mach 5. It effortlessly punched through the heavy armor of U.S. tanks. Intelligence says Iran's EFPs caused the deaths of over 600 U.S. troops. That's 1 in 6 American combat casualties in Iraq.
So the U.S. has absorbed these proxy attacks for decades. We saw escalations like Trump's strike on Qasem Soleimani and Iran's ballistic missile response at Al-Assad Air Base. But the red line that seems to have triggered this weekend's massive strike was the brazen shift toward domestic assassination plots on American soil.
Right, the FBI declassified those plots. The IRGC actively trying to hire hitmen to assassinate a journalist, Masih Alinejad, in Brooklyn.
And most critically, the disrupted IRGC plot to assassinate Donald Trump himself. The intelligence suggested they thought a former president would have reduced Secret Service protection. When a foreign nation attempts to assassinate the political leadership of the United States on American soil, the traditional paradigm of proportional response evaporates.
I'm not denying the why. Synthesizing that history, it's obvious why the U.S. and Israel felt they had to cut the head off the snake to break the cycle. I'm just pointing out that cutting the head off yields tremendous uncontrollable fallout, which is exactly what we are seeing in the deeply fractured political response today.
The domestic divide in the U.S. is stark. President Trump, overseeing the operation from Mar-a-Lago, is taking an incredibly aggressive stance. He warned Iran of a force that has never been seen before if they continue. He even released a video urging Iranian citizens to take over their government, saying this is their only chance for generations. He's openly advocating for regime change from within.
And on the other side, figures like Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Gavin Newsom are accusing the administration of a reckless regime change war. Newsom asked what the end game is, pointing out that one was never described to the American people.
Though it's not entirely partisan, Democratic Senator John Fetterman actually broke ranks to praise the operation as a historic moment for global peace, echoing the idea that removing Khamenei frees the Iranian people. It shows how the legacy of Iran's actions resonates across the aisle, even if the methods are debated.
The international stage is just as chaotic. The UK is allowing the US to use British bases strictly for defensive measures to shoot down missiles, but won't participate in offensive strikes. Gulf nations are warning they'll take independent military action to defend their airspace. And Russia's Vladimir Putin strongly condemned the assassination as a violation of international law. Losing Iranian drone supplies is a massive blow to Moscow.
The diplomatic friction even boiled over at the UN. The Iranian ambassador told U.S. envoy Mike Waltz to be polite, and Waltz fired back, refusing to be lectured by a regime that funds global terrorism. It was just a raw, unfiltered clash broadcast to the world.
And amidst all that noise, the White House claims that new potential leadership within Iran has reached out to talk. Wait, seriously, who is even picking up the phone in Tehran right now?
That is the most dangerous vacuum. This is a theocracy that's only had 2 supreme leaders since 1979.
Exactly. You don't get an instant transition to democracy. You get a violent, bloody scramble among the surviving hardline clerics and IRGC warlords who are just as committed to the destruction of Israel.
Let's pull all of this together. The gravity of the last 48 hours is truly hard to process. The geopolitical map has been erased. The US and Israel executed this mathematically perfect, time-on-target strike to instantly decapitate the Iranian regime. But the chaotic human fallout is just beginning. Stranded travelers, a looming oil crisis, terror threats on US soil, and an ongoing barrage of retaliatory missiles.
And as you process all this, I want you to think about that chilling concept we discussed, the severed limb. The U.S. successfully collapsed the head of the regime, but the surviving Iranian military units are completely isolated, operating on pre-programmed instructions, like a severed limb thrashing violently, unaware the brain is gone.
If the command structure is truly erased, who actually holds the launch keys to the thousands of ballistic missiles still hidden in those mountain valleys?
And how do you negotiate a ceasefire with an enemy that can no longer communicate with its own weapon systems?
That is a terrifying reality to confront, but it is the world we woke up to today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep seeking context as this unprecedented historical event continues to unfold.
Oh, hit the like button and subscribe. And hit that damn bell.